Chapter 19. "The door!" Steele cried out through the thunder of guns. "On it," Jessica replied, sounding far too calm for the situation. Jessica need not have bothered though, for several bullets smashed through the glass, shattering the door just before Steele reached it. Steele did not pause to watch the gunfight, but the others in the undercover area were scrambling for cover behind the gun crates, overturned round tables and ducking behind a few raised garden beds made of concrete. The police came from both sides, shooting rubber bullets and darts that paralysed their target through electrical currents. Those that died that night met their end in the first few seconds that Steele was running for the warehouse. Explosions of pain erupted at his shoulder and hip as bullets grazed him as well. Keeping his head low, he sprinted through the opening into the dark rooms of the second warehouse. Alarms were sounding due to the broken door, and the noise from the gunshots and the police sirens filled the night air with deafening cascade. "Get rid of the damn alarms," Steele said through gritted teeth, straining to keep his thoughts focused in the deafening noise. "You could say please," Jessica remarked, a pout in her voice. The security alarms went quiet then, bringing Steele some relief as he hurried through the small administration department of the warehouse. Not far from the entrance he ran through, he turned down a short corridor and opened a maintenance closet. A frown came to his face as he looked about the small cupboard though, for the bag he had placed there was now gone. "Looking for that bag you put there a few days ago?" Jessica asked in his ear, though the answer was obvious. "A security guard found it yesterday and took it away." "Damn it!" Steele cursed through gritted teeth. "There goes the escape plan." "What was in the bag?" Jessica asked curiously. "A police riot uniform," he replied, his mind searching for another path of escape. "That's pretty clever," Jessica said with some sincerity. "Heads up, it's Jimmy." Steele heard the heavy footsteps and spun about, his pistol aimed at the end of the corridor, just as Jimmy appeared there. The overweight man was panting heavily, his suit stained from blood from several wounds, his eyes manic as he looked at Steele and raised his own pistol. "You traitorous bastard," Jimmy spat viciously. "I should have killed you when we first met. You're the rat, ain't you? I knew it all along." "Don't be stupid," Steele frowned. "I'm no cop. But you were right about there being one. I suppose I could tell you, but you won't have use for the information now." A trickle of blood appeared at Jimmy's hairline and ran down his face as the man gritted his teeth angrily. "He's out of ammo," Jessica said in Steele's ear, bringing a sly smile to his face. "Goodbye, Jimmy," Steele said simply and squeezed the trigger of his revolver. His shot was true and found its target in Jimmy's heart, killing the man. But not before Jimmy fired his own gun. Steele's eyes widened in horror the second he saw the flash of light from Jimmy's pistol. The bullet zipped past his ear and thundered into the wall behind him. "Guess he wasn't out," Jessica remarked casually as Steele gathered his composure. "My bad. Good thing Jimmy's a bad shot." "That's the last time I take your advice," Steele snapped, and took a deep breath. "Well, that's not very nice," huffed Jessica, "and I just found you an exit too. I don't think I'll share it with you now. Good luck with the police." "Wait. I'm sorry I snapped," Steele conceded and rubbed his brow. "Where's this exit?" "You have to ask nicely," Jessica teased. "How about saying, 'Please, Lady Thorne, show me your way from this foul dungeon'?" "Jessica," Steele said, his tone showing his lack of amusement. "All right," the hacker sighed heavily. "You need to learn to chill out. Go back and take a left." Slipping the revolver into the belt at his back, Steele followed Jessica's instructions, taking care to slip around Jimmy's body and not step in the pool of blood that was on the ground around the man. Taking the turn, he caught a glimpse outside through the windows that looked upon the pathway between this building and the administration building. There was Rex and his crew, now only two left, as they hurried towards the secondary car park. They were shooting back towards the main entrance, and Rex bore signs of several wounds, his suit heavily stained with blood. From the second car park came his backup, and covered his retreat to the large vehicles. "Left here," Jessica said in Steele's ear as he turned from the sights outside. "The door on the right will take you down to maintenance levels." Again Steele followed the hacker's instructions. Pausing as he opened the door and glanced back over his shoulder, his thoughts went to Farron and concern filled his heart. "Jessica," Steele asked seriously. Can you see Farron? I can't hear much more gunfire. Yeah, the fight is pretty much over, Jessica said, sounding bored. The boys in blue won this one. Most of Jimmy's crew are dead, and so is Clara. And Farron? Steele asked, hints of desperation coming to his voice and mind. She was that chick, right? Jessica asked, still sounding disinterested. Yes, he confirmed, his irritation starting to show now. Can you see her? Yeah, I see her, Jessica sighed. She's been arrested. She seems alright. Got hit with that paralyzing dart. Must have been a good shot by the cops to hit her. Steele released a heavy sigh of relief before heading down through the door and down the stairs. He closed the door behind him to make sure he hid his tracks and focused on the path before him. He'd always believed that Farron would be alright, and she had told him such after he divulged his plans to her. But the amount of men Jimmy had brought was more than he reasoned, and he could not hide the relief he felt knowing Farron was alive and well. Do you like her? Jessica asked, catching him by surprise. She's a friend, Steele said casually. Am I going the right way? You know what I mean. Is this the right way? Steele asked again. Yeah, follow this hall to the end, Jessica instructed. At the intersection, stop and open the hatch on the floor. After that, things might get a little cramped and hot. You're not afraid of small spaces, are you? No, Steele said with a frown. But what do you mean by hot? Your escape route is through ventilation pipes, Jessica explained simply. They run all along this part of the docks and connect with all the compounds. Don't worry, it's just hot air. I doubt you'll suffocate or get roasted. You don't sound very confident, Steele remarked, hesitating as he stopped at the junction and squatted down by the hatch. You can always get yourself arrested, Jessica offered, her tone still filled with boredom. By the way, once you're in the tunnel, our line will be cut off, so listen closely. Take the first right once inside and follow it for 1 kilometre, then it's a left for another 500 metres, where you'll come to an access vent. That's your exit. How can I judge a kilometre? Steele frowned, still feeling hesitant. There are markers every 100 metres, Jessica replied. Good luck. I'll talk to you once you're out, and in the meantime, I'll be sitting here thinking about you, all hot and sweaty. Okay? Right, Steele continued to frown. But with a deep breath, he opened the hatch and climbed down the chute. Instantly, the heat stung his eyes and made it difficult to breathe. It was like he had just stepped into a sauna where the occupants were competing at who would withstand the most heat and humidity. He'd forgot to ask Jessica which way he was to turn once he was at the bottom of the access chute. And as the hatch slammed shut above him, he realized he'd missed his opportunity. Fortunately, he had a good sense of direction, and had a rough idea of which way he needed to go from that point. Jessica had not been joking when she said it would be tight, and fortunately there were vents along the pipe at various intervals that allowed some light into the steamy space. Noticing the distance markers easily enough, he took the first right turn and crawled along at an agonizingly slow pace. Sweat poured down his face and stung his eyes. The injury at his shoulder and hip burned painfully with each movement, but he pushed onwards, through the darkness. Very soon the heat and stifling air became too much to bear, and he desperately pushed his face up against one of the small vents, trying to suck in some fresh air. It was not very effective, but it gave him some relief, and at the small grate he picked up the sound of sirens from the police, now sounding quite distant. Steadying himself, he continued on, stopping at vents when he became too much. The minutes drifted by painfully, and he lost count of how many markers he had passed. His mind was foggy, and the pain from his wounds was sharp, sending jolts through his body with each strained movement. He passed through one intersection, reasoning that he had not yet gone far enough to take the next turn, and he pushed on through the dank dark. Finally, he reached the next junction and made the turn, edging himself around the corner like some rodent in a drain pipe. Come on, he grunted, forcing himself to keep going and ignore the pain and short breath. After what seemed like hours, he reached the access chute and desperately scrambled up the metal rungs of the ladder. He could see the grate above him, still many meters away, and he greatly hoped that it was not locked or chained shut. The air grew lighter as he reached the manhole, and the heat lessened. With a sigh of relief, he pushed the lid upwards, but it would not move. "Damn it!" he cursed loudly, pushing harder at the cover, his mind becoming frantic. Then he saw the latch and almost laughed aloud before he turned the handle and lifted the cover up easily. He never felt as relieved as he did when he clambered out of those pipes and sucked in the fresh air. Never did he think the smog-filled skies of Eden would look or taste so good. Out from the pipes, he sat down on the ground and gathered his breath and composure. The breeze was cool on his sweaty cheeks, and through the veil of fog the lights of Eden sparkled. A smile came to his face as he looked at the city. It was over. He had successfully played Clara and Jimmy against each other, resulting in them both being eliminated. What now? The question caused the relief he felt to be washed away and was replaced with a determined focus. Now, things will get interesting, Steele said to himself, a look of determination coming to his face. "What things?" Jessica asked in his ear. "Are you out already, Steele? That was quick. I was thinking it'd take a few hours. Nice going." "Thanks," Steele replied flatly, a frown coming to his face. "So what now?" Jessica wondered as Steele got to his feet and looked about the area. The vents were surrounded by a high fence that was situated on a small and rocky knoll between two large warehouse compounds. His frown deepened as he looked at the razor wire that was wound around the top of the fence. Taking a deep breath, he walked over to the gate into the concrete area and tried the handle. "Locked," Steele said, his irritation starting to show. "Of course it's locked." "No, it's not," Jessica said in a cheery tone, and the electric lock on the gate opened, causing the gate to swing inwards. "Nice," Steele remarked quietly. "I guess you're fairly useful." "Why, thank you," Jessica replied, sounding rather smug. "I even called a taxi to pick you up on the road. It's prepaid and will take you back to Knox's apartment." "Thanks," Steele said as he closed the gate behind him and headed for the road. The area was fairly open, with only a few shrubs about the place and concrete walls on either side that marked the boundaries of the two warehouse compounds. There were broken bottles and other rubbish about the area in one spot. By some large rocks, the grass was worn away to a sandy dirt, which was filled with cigarette butts. It seemed that this spot was a favourite place to loiter of the local delinquents, but likely the police sirens had scared them off. "Wait," Steele said as he stopped at the sidewalk. "How do you know where Knox lives?" "Please," Jessica scoffed. "Of course I know. I'm a genius with a computer. See, look there. Your chariot arrives." The hour was past midnight, and the roads in this part of the city were empty, aside from a single taxi that approached slowly, as if looking for something. The driver must have spotted Steele standing there and quickened his pace before pulling to a stop right in front of him. As he climbed into the back, Steele took out his phone and sent a message to Knox, who was likely wondering how the deal had resulted. It went as planned, mostly. The driver did not say anything to Steele before driving off down the road, though he caught a few curious glances in the rearview mirror. Rubbing his tired eyes, Steele watched the lights of the city pass by, whilst listening to the gentle music playing from the taxi's radio. Down a few of the streets, he spotted the flashing lights of police cars, but they were not stopped, and sooner than Steele had thought, the driver pulled in front of the building that housed Knox's apartment. Thanks," Steele said to the driver as he slipped out. "Have a good night." "You too," the man replied, his eyes still filled with suspicion and curiosity. But without a word, he drove off and Steele headed inside. Before he reached the elevators, a reply message came from Knox. "Glad to hear it. Things are going to get interesting now. What's the plan?" The question gave Steele some pause. He did have a vague outline of a plan in mind, but there was still much to do, and recently he had been questioning his desired outcome. Everything he had done up to this point had been to get Jimmy off his back and make some money. The money part of the plan had not really worked out so well, but at least now he did not have to deal with an annoying associate. But his dealings with the company were not likely ended. Benedict would come calling now, and Steele did not know if he wanted to go down the path that was before him. Taking a deep breath, he replied to Knox, "I'll let you know when I know." "Well, here we are," Jessica said in his ear as he stepped from the elevator and moved to the door of the flat. "Home, sweet home. Are you going to invite me in for a celebratory drink?" "No drinks," Steele replied, ignoring the young woman's quip. "I'm having a shower and going to bed." "In that case, I'll join you," Jessica said with a giggle. "Right," Steele said slowly, a frown coming to his face as he moved into the apartment. "Anyway, thank you for your help tonight, Jessica. I appreciate it." "Don't mention it," replied the hacker sincerely. "It was good fun. And now I can have a good long look through all Reuven's private servers. I'll let you know if I see anything good. Keep that earpiece. We can use it again. Nighty-night. Don't let the bed bugs bite." "Yeah, night," Steele replied with a slight smile and took the hearing device out before he let out a deep breath. The ache of his injuries was imposing, and his weariness from crawling through the pipes was almost too much. But taking a deep breath, he showered and tossed his dirty clothes into the wash, sending them on a long wash so all the traces of blood would be taken away. During his shower, he also took a close look at the grazes on his shoulder and hip. Both wounds seemed fairly superficial, and had already started to scab over. After a refreshing shower, he stumbled into his room and collapsed on the bed, quickly falling into a deep sleep. The sound of loud banging on the front door snapped him from his slumbers, and groggily he stumbled out of bed. Glancing at his phone, he could see that he had only gotten a few hours' sleep. Even as he was looking at the screen, a message appeared from an unknown number. "That's the cops at the front door. Buttercup." A frown came to his brow as he read the message, and to his surprise it deleted itself as soon as he read it. Police at the front door was nothing to alarm me. Likely it was Reeves come to pay a visit. What was more concerning was the fact that Jessica knew not only his number, but also that the police were there. "Police, open up!" the voice of Reeves yelled through the door to the unit. Grumbling under his breath, Steele pulled on some tracksuit pants, and then he froze. His eyes fell upon the revolver he had carried with him since the deal. He knew there was no other incriminating evidence in the apartment, and he could still hear his clothes washing. But that was the gun he killed Jimmy with. "Damn," he muttered quietly, wishing he'd thrown the gun in the water when he climbed on that pipe. His mind raced as he looked about the area. There was no use hiding it. Reeves likely brought a few officers to search the place. "Open the door, Steele," Reeves called again, banging heavily on the door. "Just a minute," Steele shouted back angrily, and grabbing the pistol he slipped it into his pants behind his back and pulled on a dressing robe without a t-shirt. The heavy gown concealed the weapon well enough, and it was all he could do but hope that Reeves did not think to search his person. All right, Steele called irritably as he walked to the entrance to the sound of more banging, and turning on the apartment lights he opened the door wide to see Reeves looking rather unhappy. "What the hell, Reeves? It's the middle of the night." "Can we come in?" Reeves asked as he pushed through the door, followed by two officers. "Search the place." "Search?" Steele acted confused, closing the door and moving to sit on the sofa. "What's going on, Reeves?" "You're going to feign ignorance, are you?" the old man huffed as he followed Steele into a small sitting area. "It won't be too hard," Steele remarked dryly as he sat down and rubbed his tired eyes. "I don't have a clue as to why you're here." Reeves stayed standing in front of Steele and narrowed his eyes as he placed his hands on his hips. It was clear by the man's expression he was not in the mood for any games, and he had likely gotten as little sleep as Steele. "There was a shootout earlier this night at a warehouse facility in East Point Docks," Reeves said. Clearly annoyed, he had to explain. "Both Clara Carswell and Jimmy Pierce are dead. You don't know anything about that?" "They're both dead?" Steele exclaimed, a feigned surprise, and looked away in confusion, shaking his head slightly. "No, I had no idea. Wait, what about Farron? Is she there too? Is she all right?" "Farron Keene is fine," Reeves said, holding his hand up to ease Steele's mounting concern. "She's in custody, as are many others. But look me in the eye, Steele. Look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Steele frowned as he looked hard at Reeves, trying his best to seem annoyed by the sudden demand. I am telling you the truth, Steele said firmly. I had no idea. I've been sleeping since about 10 o'clock. Look at the security footage. If you doubt me, surely the warehouse has surveillance, right? That footage has vanished, Reeves said unhappily, turning away towards the glass doors that led down the balcony. Vanished? Steele echoed, sounding confused. How could that happen? Whose warehouse facility was it anyway? Reeves did not reply as he looked back to Steele, a frown still on his face as he pondered something. Sir, one of the officers said as both came from the bedrooms, there's nothing here. Big surprise, Steele said sarcastically, causing all the officers to scowl at him. Can I go back to sleep now? Reeves took a deep breath and gave a nod to the two officers in uniform. Head out, I'll join in a sec, Reeves said to his co-workers before turning a very serious gaze towards Steele. You can see what this means, right? What the deaths of Clara and Jimmy will do to East Point? Yeah, I can see, Steele nodded honestly, hiding his sly smile. I know you were involved in this somehow, Reinhardt, Reeves continued, his voice lowering. I might have even congratulated you on eliminating them both, if I was not an officer of the law, but I am. A storm will come now, boy. You'll be right in the middle of it, so I suggest you get out of the game while you can. Or at least join the right side. And which side is that? Steele cut in seriously. The police? Not this again. From what I hear on the streets, Sovereign has infiltrated all levels of governance, including the police. And they're just as bad as the company. Reeves clenched his jaw and looked away irritably. As I said, Steele, Reeves said seriously, looking him in the eye, a storm is about to break, and you should get out while you can. Otherwise, it might be Knox or Farron, or even you instead Jimmy and Clara. Steele did not reply, and Reeves turned for the door. Good night, Steele, Reeves said over his shoulder. Make sure you watch your back. That's why I've got you, Uncle Archibald, Steele called in reply, causing Reeves to pause at the exit and glance over his shoulder before departing and closing the door behind him. As the door shut and locked automatically, Steele breathed a sigh of relief and ran a hand over his face before turning his eyes out to the views of Eden. The dark city was still sparkling with street and building lights, and the heavens above were beginning to glow brighter. Slowly he stood up and moved out the sliding door, his eyes absently gazing through the empty streets below. It was peaceful at this hour, but Reeves was right. With both Clara and Jimmy dead, a storm was coming. Benedict would move quickly to reset his control over the area, while other gangs, including Sovereign, would vie for dominance. A slight smile came to Steele's face as he pondered what was to come.